Hi, I'm Eric, and I'm a social studies educator, historian, and host of this, the Everything is a Primary Source podcast. I'm also an avid collector of popular culture artifacts. I love what I find at thrift store outlets, garage sale leftovers, and what I spot just making my way around the built world. I enjoy sorting through boxes of free books and magazines, not to mention online collections like Internet Archive, and of course the Library of Congress. But you don't need to spend your time digging through bins or following online rabbit holes to get a look into the past. The movies and TV we watch, the books we read, and the games we play are all documents of the past. So is fashion, food, music, toys, even the roads we travel on and the places we live and work in. Everything is a primary source. This podcast is the result of exhibiting these kinds of artifacts in public, getting passersby to select an item they connect with, and then chatting with me to see what it says about the time, place, and people who made it. The conversation you are about to hear, therefore, is your history, my history, our history, through popular culture. So I'm with Christopher Cambridge.
Thanks for having me.
And we were chatting before we hit record for the Everything is a Primary Source podcast that you are looking to get into two things, podcasting, and you do a little bit of stand-up comedy?
Not yet, but I am this weekend down in Boston.
Oh, really? Is it an open mic
Absolutely.
type thing?
I could not find an open mic around here, so I figured I'd go down there and search.
Well, Boston is the place. I mean, there's so many comics that have come from Boston over the years, and you could just join their ranks soon.
I went to school there, and then I stayed for about 8 years total, and now I'm back.
But are you from this area originally? So
born in Portsmouth, raised in Kittery, and now this place is so up and coming. I'm glad I came back.
Yeah, it's like all the best things about Boston, but much smaller and walkable.
I agree.
You could go from one end of the city to the other.
So many breweries and restaurants and stuff. I love it.
Everything. I grew up here in the 80s, and it was a different city back then. It's a lot more gentrified now, which is not
Thank you
bad.
for using that word, because that's what I try to tell people and they get mad, but it's true.
I mean, and that word goes in a couple different directions. Some
Yeah,
people see
not
it as
even
a
in a negative
thing,
way, but like just factual.
I like it because, I can come to Portsmouth and get culture and not have to deal with the Boston traffic and everything like that. So you chose from my collection of just stuff, Joan Jett and the Blackhearts. It's a single for Little Liar. I'm not actually familiar with that particular song, but what made Joan Jett leap off the table to you?
Okay, so I have done a deep dive into punk music recently, and I grew up a hip-hop head. Wu-Tang Clan was my first concert. I've been writing poetry since I was in third grade, and I pursued music, and I'll never stop writing. But after listening to punk music, I feel like I finally found my genre, and it really speaks to me. It gives me even more energy than most hip-hop songs would. But my current favorite band is called Emil and the Sniffers, and I'm trying to see them. It's a female, almost like a modern age Australian Joan Jett, like blonde chick from Australia. But they're playing at Fenway on my birthday, July 24th, as the second act behind Foo Fighters, and now they're touring again. I was going to go to the Boston Calling before the drummer died and everything, R.I.P. But it's just, I love punk music now.
That's my genre. That's what I've always listened to. And they used to have, I don't know if they still have it or not. They used to have this thing called the Vans Warped Tour.
Yeah, I almost went. I don't know if they still have it, but I know many friends that have gone.
And when I was going to it, it was almost 100% punk stuff. It was kind of like the punk rock response to Ozfest and Lollapalooza. Like, we can do a touring thing too. But the last couple that I went to in the late 90s had a lot of hip-hop artists joining on to it. And it was funny because the crowds, their fans were different. But when you break it down, the music styles are very similar. They might not sound at all the same, but they are similar in that they are, they're folk music, really, when it comes down to it. It's not trained musicians. It's not people who are overly proficient with their instruments when it comes to these bands, or, with a lot of hip-hop stars, they don't even play an instrument. They're just, rapping.
Just reflecting on their environment.
Right, and that's exactly what it is. It's like you were saying, writing your poetry. You're extracting directly from, the life of, and then what I particularly like about punk music, and I don't know if this is what you like about it, is it's short and it's like early rock and roll.
Yeah, what I love about it is the energy is just infectious. Like you can just feel it; it gets you going.
Yeah.
And like the instrument playing is just amazing for me.
It's so fast and so like it's so
upbeat.
raw.
Yeah,
right.
Exactly. That's what I love about hip hop. They're both so raw.
Yeah, and you get like the true emotions coming through it. So the question I chose to talk about with Joan Jett and the Blackhearts is, what was the maker's role or status in society at that time? And really even, I guess, forever, but particularly when this record came out, because
When did this come out?
if you look at the cover art, it's just her face.
88.
So this is later on in her career. She's
Well,
established
she's that
as a
beautiful.
solo artist. I've always found her very striking, personally. But what would you say that her status was by late 80s? And maybe even the kind of music she played. How had that been faring by the 80s?
I would say out of any genre, she's probably one of the most iconic female vocalists to ever live. And honestly, even outside of gender, I feel like she just was the face of punk music, at least one of them, and is almost like timeless where she still is, you know?
So I always think of her as kind of like the female Billy Idol. Because they both started with bands in the 70s. She was in the Runaways, he was in Generation X. And then when the 80s arrived and, you know, MTV was there and things got more commercial, that's when they just became known as I'm Joan Jett and the Blackhearts. And Billy Idol, just Billy Idol.
For sure.
And I have over there another record that's Lita Ford. She and Joan Jett were in the same band. They were in the Runaways. And Joan Jett would have warmed up to you immediately because she preferred punk music. She was more Sex Pistols, Ramones.
Hell yeah.
She liked that. Lita Ford was much more into heavy metal. So when they broke up, when the Runaways broke up, they went their opposite directions.
Okay.
And, you know, you can hear it in their music. They both have a very similar background. But I think by 88, she is doing okay as just Joan Jett.
Yeah.
What do you think of that name, the Blackhearts? That's a cool name for a band.
I think it's pretty badass, you know, honestly. I don't know enough about just like her history and everything, like especially with Lita Ford. Lita Ford, yeah. But that's very interesting, and it makes me want to look more into it. But I think that's a sick band name, and it's just, I don't even know how to describe. She's just like one of the coolest people to ever do it.
When I see that picture, it says rock and roll.
Yeah.
You know, and
like
not
she
even
is rock
just
and
punk
roll
rock. She is
in a
rock
person
and roll.
personified.
Like leather, you know, outfits.
The hair.
Pretty intimidating,
everything.
honestly.
Yeah,
like
I would be intimidated.
I've heard that she's actually really nice, you know, which is usually how, you know, they might put on a gruff exterior, but then when you see them...
Everyone's just people, you know?
Yeah, exactly. She was actually a big fan of the Baltimore Orioles.
Okay.
Because even though she grew up in California, I think she was originally from Maryland, and she also liked the Green Bay Packers.
Interesting.
And her reason was because she remembers watching a game and seeing them covered in mud. It was one of those muddy games, and she liked how the big G on their helmet still stood out and was like, and she kind of, I think in some ways kind of adopted that in her own look. Like the hair is wild, the leather is tough looking, but then piercing through it is this face. It's unmistakable face. It's Joan Jett. You know, you can't mistake that with anybody else.
Even if I couldn't see and I was blind, like that is a voice you cannot like mistake for anyone else.
Right, exactly.
You know?
If
she's just such a distinct personality.
If you only had the radio, and then finally one day, and I listen to a lot of radio just because I'm in the car all the time.
That's what I went to school for originally.
Oh, really? Okay,
yeah.
I can tell. You know how to handle yourself.
First
with a
time
microphone.
on a microphone, but
you know what you're doing.
Yeah.
It's communication. I listen to a lot of radio, news on the radio, and I have television, obviously, but I don't have like cable or anything like that.
Same.
So I just watched the news for the first time in a while, and I'm like, oh, so that's what that guy looks like? You know, I've been hearing his name on the news for however long, and that's what the person looks like. So if you're listening to her music, just her music, and you don't have MTV, you don't have any, you don't have the cover of the album, you just hear it on the radio, that's probably what you're picturing in your head anyway.
Absolutely. And just probably one of my favorite songs ever, Bad Reputation. You know, like that's one of my favorite songs. And as me, Chris Cambridge, like I feel like that's one of my defining songs that I can relate to the most because I don't know. I don't have the best reputation, or I didn't growing up, just because like my older brother would like, he was just selling weed and stuff and getting in trouble with police. So every single year I had a teacher pull me out and just be like, oh my God, I'm so sorry. You're not a troublemaker like your brother. You're such a nice, sweet, smart, intelligent kid. But I was a smart ass at the same time, and it's fun to do bad things. I've grown out of that, but I feel like I can relate to that song and just her personality and just punk music.
That snotty kind of like, I don't care.
Yeah, I'm like, my family's from New York. I don't give a fuck. I don't care if you don't like me. I'm Chris Cambridge.
Have you ever seen the show Freaks and Geeks?
I was going to say that's one of my favorite shows that, that's a masterpiece of a show. I'm glad they didn't make more because it's just such one and done.
And considering it's Judd Apatow who made it, it's because he got canceled that he didn't make any more. Because if you ever watch one of his movies, they go on forever.
Okay.
You're like, comedy.
I didn't even know
movie.
he directed that.
Oh yeah. Well, he created it, writer. I think he directed a few episodes. He's one of the creators of it though. But some of his movies are like, okay, this could have ended 30 minutes ago.
yeah.
Fine.
I saw Dune yesterday, and I was like, this is a great movie, but it's like 3 hours.
Yeah,
man.
you need to take a break every now and then. Be like, all right, it's I'll bring my easy chair to the theater. So I can relax a little bit and watch this thing. I think, what we can do with image. I mean, image in the 80s was everything. I think that somebody even said that then in the 80s. Image is everything. If you can convey it just in that very small cover of this record where it's just her looking back at us. And, it's not quite a sneer. She's not, but she definitely looks serious.
What I love about her is she's just unapologetic, and I feel like she just stands to, like, be who you are no matter what, and, like, don't feel bad about it. Don't apologize. Just, if that's who you are, just be you.
That's, I think, the overall message. I think that's what attracted her to the punk scene originally, was because of its democratic nature. In this very building that we're in right now, I saw a concert here a couple years ago of a local punk band called The Queers. I don't know if you've ever heard of them.
No.
They're from Portsmouth. They're out of Atlanta now, but they started here in the Portsmouth in the 80s and the 90s, and there used to be a club in Portsmouth called the Elvis Room.
Oh, okay.
And
I think I've heard of that.
It was right on Congress Street, and that's where all the local bands would play, and they would play there all the time. Well, they had an Elvis Room celebration here at 3S Artspace a couple years ago.
Hell yeah.
And all the bands that had been cycled through there, if they were still around, they reunited and played a show. And they are 100% still punk rock band. They get up there, they do 40 songs in a row, nonstop. They don't talk to the audience. They don't, they're just like, all right, here we are.
Do their thing.
And just plow through it. Rude titles of songs. They're snotty, but they're just...
my type of people.
It's democratic. It's like anybody could be up there on the stage. They don't look... Like, it's like if you just saw the band walking down the street, you wouldn't be like, oh, there's a band. Like, they're just like regular guys, and they just play, this kind of music. So, the status in society in the 80s for somebody like that, they would kind of fit in for... the rock and roll, we know better. Joan Jett was not prepackaged, but she could look like that by 88. But yeah, hey, Christopher, this has been a lot of fun.
Yeah, I was going to say.
I'm glad you're walking through. This is just kind of perfect.
This is great. I love it.
So you like podcasting?
Absolutely. I mean, this is my first time, but it makes me want to do it for real.
It's a lot of fun because you kind of forget after a while that you're even recording.
Just having a conversation.
Yeah, it's
having
just
a good time.
People talking. Thanks again.
We're having fun.
That's right. Popular culture, by definition, connects and unites us, and proves that people of different backgrounds, in fact, have a lot in common with one another. I hope you enjoyed this conversation, at least in part, for that reason. If it connects with you and you'd like to add to it, or any of the podcast episodes, just visit everything-history.com and search for the Everything is a Primary Source project, which can be found in the classroom section of the website. We'd love to hear what you have to say. Be sure to rate and share this podcast wherever you are listening to it now, and follow Everything as a Primary Source on social media, including YouTube and especially Instagram. Thank you for listening to the EPS podcast, where everything is a primary source.